Round 2. Resolved. There is no right or wrong answer to any political debate. To further contextualize the resolution, I propose a four-planked observational framework. First, the word any in the resolution means I need only prove a minimum of one example to meet the grammatical burden, or I can prove a general overarching thesis of ethical politics to meet the burden. Second, the resolution isn't contextualized by location, therefore the resolution spans beyond the United States and into the international realm. Third, the term or in the resolution means I can focus on exclusive wrongness or rightness without the flip side. Fourth, as the rules and definitions of right imply, right is a term of comparative analysis since it is referring to efficacy. Thus, as long as I prove that X is more efficient than Y, or vice versa, then I have linked the point to the resolution. Contention 1. Consequentialism. The term consequentialism refers to the political or individual ethical philosophy that advocates that the right action is the one that creates the best result or consequence. Thus, as a thought experiment, the resolution is adamantly negated on the fact that even if ends cannot be specifically outlined, the right action is the one that would hypothetically create the best result. As such, governments must weigh these consequences through empirical and analytical tests. Harrius 94 writes, "In politics, the ethic of responsibility rather than the ethic of absolute ends is appropriate. While an individual is free to treat rights as absolute, governments must always weigh consequences and competing claims or ends. Once they enter the realm of politics, rights must take their place in a hierarchy of interests, including national security and prosperity. No responsible government will ever be able to put them always at the top and treat them as overriding." And egalitarianism demands utility. Consequentialism precludes zeroing anyone out. Dworkin 77 writes, "Utilitarian arguments do not suppose that any life is more valuable than any other. Utilitarian arguments embody the fundamental right of equal concern and respect, because they treat the wishes of each member of the community on par with the wishes of any other, with no bonus or discount reflecting the view that the member is more or less worthy. Thus, governments, when deciding policy, have an obligation to effectively weigh consequences. This is the overarching ethical methodology to rightness." Contention 2. Independent scenarios. Now, at first, these examples may seem invalid due to the rules Tuff established. However, if you refer to the bottom of Tuff's round 1, he outlined specifically that examples should not be a gross minority. Plus, he used the phrase "such as" in referring to Republican and Democratic policies. With this in mind, let's evaluate a few isolated scenarios. Subpoint A. Genocide. As far as history has spanned, genocide has been a humanitarian crisis with opponents and proponents on both sides. To say genocide has simply been an idea of a gross minority is an understatement. 4 historical examples would be the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, Christian persecutions in the Roman Empire, the Armenian genocide in the Ottoman Empire, and the genocide in Rwanda. In all of these cases, genocide has been perpetrated by the majority or those elected to power by the majority. However, let's look at a recent, current-day example of genocide. This would be Darfur. Refer to source 1. In this case, the minority is being systematically exterminated with implicit consent from the Sudanese government. In the source, you can see the death toll, which is catastrophic. Genocide is a complete degradation of humanity based in ignorance. It is an attack on that which makes us all equal, namely we are all humans. This is a clear and definitive political wrong. Subpoint B. Child labor. Refer to source 2. In China, children are forced to work in disgusting conditions which is unnatural for the body, resulting in disease and possibly death. These children are physical slaves to the company using them. Plus, these children have no recourse, since they are under the oppression of a totalitarian communist state. No one should be forced by their government to work for literally nothing, and simply be a means to an end. A simple tool for the whim of the government and a corporation. Subpoint C. Sex trade. Refer to source 3. The sex trade is alive and well in Thailand. Women are seen as simply instruments of sexual pleasure. These women are taken against their will and sold on the market. And no, this is not done by a simple minority. It is condoned by the Crown of Thailand. This is a perfect example of abuse of male dominance against women. Men and women are equal. None of us choose our gender, and thus no one should have dominance over the other. Subpoint D. Racism. Refer to source 4. Racism is alive in Australia against the Aborigines. This group of people has been the target of countless amounts of racist policy, spanning from restriction to welfare benefits to prevention of children from being raised in that culture. This is referred to as the stolen generation. Moreover, racism isn't simply applied to the Aborigines. It is applied to Muslims and Africans as well, who experience de facto forms of racism. Subpoint E. Exploitation of women. Refer to source 5. In Saudi Arabia, women are systemically dominated and exploited. Women are seen as inferior in this Islamic culture, and as such they can't leave the house without a male, and they have negligible and limited rights. Subpoint F. forms of the death penalty. Refer to source 6. In Iran, homosexuals and adulteresses are stoned to death. This goes beyond the notion of cruel and unusual punishment. People are being killed for non-chosen traits and for having sex. Subpoint G. War rape. Refer to source 7. In many places throughout the world, including Africa, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe, war rape is used as a mechanism to discourage and intimidate rivals. War rape has been claimed by the Geneva Convention as a war crime and a crime against humanity. Unprovoked targeting and attacking of a civilian population has been seen as definitively wrong. However, war rape takes this principle a step further and uses unprotected women as a tool of war and genocide. Contention 3. Fiscal responsibility as being economically right. Deficit spending is bad. It kills short-term and long-term economies. Summers, 2000. By crowding out investment, budget deficits can slow productivity growth and lead to a vicious cycle of higher public borrowing, which leads to higher interest rates, lower investment and economic growth, and still higher budget deficits. Excessive stimulus can increase inflationary pressures, raise risk premiums, and lead to higher interest rates. A change in the outlook for the budget provokes immediate offsetting responses from financial markets. Fiscal discipline would promote confidence and would not crowd out the private sector. Every argument supporting Keynesian spending has fatal flaws that would kill the economy. Foster 9. Proponents ignore the offsetting near-term consequences that render Keynesian stimulus useless. Government spending reduces demand by the same amount for no net change. Increase in domestic demand due to deficit spending is fully offset by a reduction in demand and arising from an increase in net exports. Even savings held in the safest of instruments are not idle, but remain part of the financial system. Borrowing to finance Keynesian remains a subtraction from the funds available to the private sector. Idle saving remains idle. Mattress stuffers are likely to increase idle savings in the face of government spending. Keynesian stimuluses would then become an economic depressant. The monetary authority can create the illusion of purchasing power through monetizing debt. The previous outcome of loose monetary policy was stagflation.